You're listening to The Girl Dad Show.
Welcome to Season 3 of The Girl Dad Show, where we explore the intersection of parenthood and entrepreneurial spirit. Join me and some incredible guests as we share tips and tricks for finding work-life balance and making a positive impact not only on the world, but also our families. Let's create a fulfilling life together. It's The Girl Dad Show, Season 3. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Girl Dad Show. Today I have Ichan on the show with me. He is an amazing entrepreneur and angel investor, currently the co-chair of the North Texas Angel Network. He's also a board member of the DEC Network. He also owns multiple small businesses, and he's an advisor and mentor to a myriad of tech startups. And he's personally been a huge mentor and friend to me over the last year. And I'm so excited to have you on the show, Ichan. Thank you for making the time.
Hey, thanks, Young. Happy to be here. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. I'm glad that we're finally doing this. I feel like we talk so much, and we've actually talked quite a bit about parenting and dad life as well, too. But I'm glad to have you on the show to actually dig into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I know you do a lot of things, but I do want to hear from you, like what you do, what you think you do for a living. How do you describe yourself and what you do?
Oh, man. So I think first and foremost is, and this is kind of appropriate, obviously, for being here, is that my world now revolves around my kids. So yes, I have businesses and I continue to help impact others, entrepreneurs. And I've always kind of considered myself a business person, but when I've had kids, I really kind of pivot a little bit to say, hey, look, my life is to support my kids now. And although I'm not paid for it, I kind of feel like I should be sometimes.
Yeah, it's a tough job. It's very tough.
But, I think just professionally, yes, I'm a franchise owner as well in a business called Stretch Zone. I think I mentioned this to you before in our conversations. But day in, day out, it's really helping entrepreneurs and being advisor and consulting, and then ultimately partnering with my wife and helping to raise our two young kids who are 5 and 3 years old. So
that's awesome. Yeah. I love that. I love that you have so much business experience, but on the flip side, I'm like a year ahead of you on the dad journey. It's like kind of cool. It like makes me feel a little more equalized.
Yeah, I think, you and I have shared some stories and talked, but I kind of definitely a little bit late in the fatherhood or parenting time frame. My wife and I started a little bit late. We did have some early on challenges with having kids, and finally we're able to have kids. But it's something that I rely upon a lot of my friends for assistance and advice. Totally. As much as I can give advice on the business aspect, I'm always a strong believer in why reinvent the wheel if I don't have to. And that kind of goes a little bit in hand with hearing from parents who've already walked this journey before me to give me advice and suggestions and feedback. Again, if I can be effective with what already works from other parents, it's not going to be all across the board work. I mean, everything worked the same for every parent, but it's always good, just like in business, it's good to get that feedback and have others who have walked that path before you to learn from them and grow from them.
Yeah, like data collection, right?
Almost, yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, I don't know if you understand why I'm doing the podcast, but that's literally what I'm doing is data collection. The whole point is to gather data. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to use all the advice that I get, but I want the data. I want to know. I want to just hear everyone's perspective and thoughts, and just like understand it and saturate myself around it.
Yeah, that's exactly it, Jan. I think for me, when I was a young kid, a young boy, and my brother hated me for this, but I always asked questions. And even today, I'm a very curious person, which also led me to being undecisive in my major in college because I couldn't decide between 5 different things I liked. Because as a young kid, I explored so many different things and asked so many questions. And my brother, his name is Bill, and he would always go, "Stop asking so many damn questions, Ichan,
Yeah.
Why are you always curious about this?" I literally was like, why does it do this? Why is it built this way? Why is the sky blue?
Yeah.
And so it just it was always in me from an innate standpoint. And I just always absorbed and wanted to learn more about different things. And it's really kind of helped shape and form me who I am today.
Yeah, that really sparked your entrepreneurial career. I feel like people that are like curious Georges, or people that are very curious like that, naturally lend themselves to being entrepreneurs or business builders, right? Because you kind of end up being outside of the box thinkers, the cliche way of saying it. But I actually think there's really no box for people that are truly curious. There's not even a box to be outside of. It's just like, you're just curious, you know what I mean? And that lends to being a business builder. So that's probably makes sense why you chose your career.
Yeah. I mean, when I was a young kid, I tried to read those little books about how to get rich quick. And,
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, so I was always thinking about sales and marketing. And seriously, I was always trying to figure out, albeit I didn't have the resources to do that, but I don't know if I ever shared with you, but I grew up on a military base over in Japan.
No, you did not tell me that.
Japan. Yeah. So
that's so cool.
So my dad was in the Army, and he was a chemist by trade, and worked for the United States. He was an officer early on, spent, I think, 7 years or 8 years in the Army as an officer, and then got out and, went the civilian route. And he met my mom overseas in Japan at the time when he was, headed over to Vietnam. And so I was actually born in Okinawa, Japan. But
so cool. Sorry, I have to ask, is that why you're named Ichan and your brother's name is Bill?
Yeah, my brother. Yeah. So when I was born, my mom who was from Okinawa, my Japanese grandparents gave me the nickname Ichan. So my real name is Joseph, actually. But I always joke, if you call me Joseph, I wouldn't respond. And I always kind of say, I didn't even know my name was Joseph until I turned 18.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's awesome.
So I was always called Ichan. Ichan, if you're familiar with counting in Japanese, Ichi is one.
Yeah.
Right? Ichi ni san. So
yeah.
I was the first grandkid of what was 16 or 17 grandkids on my Japanese side. And so I was the oldest of them. And so I was nicknamed Ichan for essentially being their first grandson.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. So Ichan is like a nickname for number one.
Yeah, for being the first grandkid. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Yeah. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to digress.
No. I'm happy to delve into this because, you think about just being the oldest, right? There's always kind of a inherent leadership role that you take on, I guess, if you will, whether it's
bestowed upon you or forced. Yeah,
right,
absolutely.
Right, exactly.
It's absolute child dichotomy. Yeah, it's like a proven thing.
I was always told when I was younger by my parents that, hey, you need to lead by example and teach your younger brother and others, right, when you're around them.
Totally.
Because they're going to obviously emulate and mimic you if you're doing something bad. So better to do something good and let them emulate you in that regard. But so I kind of fast forward. I grew up on a military base called Camp Zama. It was an army base just outside Tokyo, Japan, and where I went to finish high school at. And when you live on a military base, you don't always have the same resources as you do living here. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons why is that, for instance, I'll give you an example of how I started this, but when you mowed, we didn't really own lawnmowers, for instance, overseas, because that's a heavy burden and expense from a weight standpoint to travel from military base to military base. So oftentimes you would rent the lawnmowers from the local fire station on the base. And I built a little business, and my brother did it too, and a bunch of others did as well. When I was younger, I started mowing yards for a job. And on the military base, you think about growing up in the Army or any military type of facility, you've got short hair, high and tight, and, clean cut everything, and very disciplined in a lot of different arenas, right? And so one of those was that your yard had to be pristine and short, right? So if it got really long, someone would be knocking on your door saying, hey, you need to mow your yard. They also gave out yard of the week or yard of the months, and they would give you gift certificates and things like that, for the local commissary or PX exchange.
So it's a big deal. You're painting the picture. Yeah, got it.
I don't know if it was a big deal, but it was definitely recognized. And so I started mowing yards, and I don't remember what I charged back then, but I would rent the lawnmower from the fire station. And then I would go and mow the yard, go ask people yards to mow them. And I'd get a lot of responses like when let's say that, the mom or the housewife was home, oftentimes, not always, but a lot of times in the military environment, the military service member who was serving the military was often the father or the male.
Yeah.
And usually the mom with the kids would stay home, and whether the father's at work for the day, or if he is in the Navy, he might be on a ship for 6 months. Who knows? So oftentimes, majority of the time, I would knock on the door. It would be the spouse, the wife, or the mom answering the door, and I would ask, can I mow the yard, or do you want me to mow the yard? And I would get a significant rejection because they would say, oh, my kid or my husband will do it. Right. It's okay for now. But so I would mow the yard. And one of the things I learned from my parents was really working hard. I consider myself fairly intelligent, but I'm not going to even begin to say that I'm the most intelligent.
Yeah.
But one of the things I grew up on was that there weren't many people that were going to outwork me. And I saw what my dad did and his work effort. And he was a chemist, and he worked for the military in a crime lab and did all the chemical analysis and all the crime, as an expert witness testimony in a court of law. Like if a military service member was caught doing drugs, or, gunfire was used, or gun was used, or, they were looking at your nails and hair follicles to test out things in your blood. He would represent, if needed be in a court of law, represent testimony saying, hey, this person, had this in their blood system, or their blood alcohol content level was this, or they had barbiturates, and whatever it might be. And so he worked at a crime lab there in Japan. There were 3 in the world for the military, 1 in Japan, 1 in Germany, and 1 in Atlanta. And my dad was from Georgia. So we spent some time there as well. But so I saw what my dad was doing. My dad got a lot of accolades and awards for his hard work. And I think just through osmosis and, just trying to be successful like him, he kind of taught me about working really hard. And mom too. My parents divorced when we were really young, and we ended up actually growing up with my dad because he was in the military, and that was the much better life. And my mom, God bless her for just having the wherewithal to say, look, she kind of put aside the selfishness and said, life would be better,
Yeah.
And
she had a pragmatic approach. Yeah.
Very, very pragmatic. So I got to see my dad really firsthand be successful. And although I was never really kind of pressured up, my mom also, made my brother and I go to school on Saturdays in the morning time. That's what you do in Japan. You go to school. Japanese kids go to school in the morning time on Saturday mornings. So,
Why?
it didn't last too long, but kids would go to school Saturday morning if you were a Japanese, if you were a Japanese kid.
But I don't understand why.
Because they want you to be smart and intelligent and work, they said.
For overeducation.
Overeducation.
Oh, got it. Oh, wow. So you get a 6-day school week.
Well, it was only like for 4 hours on Saturday morning.
Still.
Right. So
wow.
I still literally hated it.
That's still like really interesting.
As a young kid, I'm basically going to school while my friends are playing.
Wow.
And so, but I look back and say, wow. And it didn't last for too long, because when the divorce happened, we didn't keep up with that. When my parents divorced, and we were like 10, 11 years old or something like that, maybe 8, I forgot. But it didn't last long, but it really instilled upon me a work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward now to when I'm young and I'm starting this little, mowing this yard business. Year 1, I mowed all these yards, and I look back, remember this base, the military base, everyone knows everybody because it's a small military base, not very large. You know, our high school was maybe 400 people, total high school from.
Oh, wow. Okay. 90. Very small. Yeah.
My graduating class was like 90.
Wow.
So my first year in building up this business, this little mowing yard business, every time after a work day, we get together like at the local Pizza Hut or, local PX or commissary, and we all gather and just talk about what we did, how much money we make, and stuff like that. And I would see everyone, including my brother, all the money we make, and all of us would be relatively the same. And remember what I said about I'm working my butt off, and I know I'm outworking everyone else, and yet I'm not making as much money as them.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, something's got to change. And this is where the curiosity and the analytics of me comes into play. So after the first year, and we only really mowed the yards in the summertime, kind of like here, right? The grass is dead in the wintertime. It's cold. It gets cold in winter.
Right.
Summertime comes around again, and you start mowing the yards in late spring and during the summer. So year 2 of this kind of business, I began to think of ideas, creative ways to better, make more money and make more money than my buddies and my brother.
Yeah.
So I come up with the idea of oftentimes we would just push the lawnmower everywhere. We'd go walk, half a mile or a mile to the fire station, and then we'd push it everywhere.
Yeah.
And these are gas powered lawnmowers as well, right? They're heavy duty, very heavy. So I got to thinking, I'm going to pull it with my bicycle. So this is before I could drive. So this is, I'm maybe 12 years old or something like that. And I am pulling with a rope, the lawnmower. Yeah. Now I'm thinking I can efficiently get to more yards than everyone else.
Increase your route capacity. Yeah.
Right.
Love it.
Yep. The other thing that so I did that, right? And I definitely feel like I'm making a little more money, but still at the end of the day, it's just not paying off.
The delta wasn't enough. Yeah.
Right. So about halfway through my second year, I realized it's a gas-powered engine. And this is like any vehicle. And about owning vehicles, it goes through maintenance regularly. And there was about 25 lawnmowers that you could rent on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So I started testing out the efficiency and the gas mileage of these lawnmowers. A. B, I tested out how often these things were breaking down.
Yeah.
And I had a little Sharpie with me, and I marked underneath them about 1 through 7 or so, the top 7 out of the 25 or so, about 1/3.
Yes.
In priority, best one to the least of the 7. Underneath it, so no one could see it, it was my marking, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And every one, when we go to the fire station, I was usually one of the first ones there, and they open like at 8 o'clock in the morning or something like that. And they had some noise ordinance where you couldn't mow a yard before 8 o'clock, right, or something like that. So I go to the fire station bright early in the summertime and be the first ones there, and I would literally look under the lawnmower and look for number 1 or 2 or 3.
Yeah. Right? To get the edge.
To get the edge, right, to have the advantage. And so I did that, and again, through the rest of the summer, I make some more money, but still not justified for the work I was doing. Right? I'm coming back to sweating, and I'm like, I am still working. I know I'm working harder than my brother. I know that for sure. I know my brother's work ethic, right? It wasn't compared to me. And so then basically year 2 ends, and I'm thinking, what else can I do? And then bing, I got another idea for year 3. And this was really what took me up a whole nother level.
Yeah.
I started mowing people's yards without even asking them.
Huh.
And it was almost as if you've heard the whole phrase, better to ask for permission than better ask for forgiveness than for permission.
That's right.
Because I told you earlier that I would get rejected significantly amount of times, right? For all sorts of reasons. Well, this time I would take pictures, or not pictures, but I would have a little notepad with me, and I would say, look, all these homes are winners of yards of the month or week of the month.
Yeah.
Right? I'm basically doing sales now.
Yeah.
And I would see a yard, and I would just automatically mow it, and then knock on the door and say, excuse me, ma'am, or sir, I just mowed your yard. It was really high. I was afraid you might get a warning notice. So I just took the liberty to mow it. My sales skyrocketed. Now factor in, I'm better using the most efficient lawnmowers. I'm pulling them. I'm not asking for permission. I'm just mowing it. And
what was the conversion rate for people not paying? What was like the churn rate?
It's not paying. It's that they said no to me to even mow the yard early on. It was at least 50%.
So 50% would say, thank you for mowing it, but I'm not paying.
No, oh, I'm sorry. No, 50% would tell me, no, I can't mow it early on.
Yeah.
Then
But
I started
after you
mowing
mowed
it.
it.
Yeah, it was like 70% would pay me still.
Yeah, it's a good conversion rate. Yeah.
Not only that, but you take away the fact that 50% of people I asked were telling me no to begin with.
It's a much bigger pool of people. Yeah.
Right. Now a much bigger pool, and I'm converting as they felt bad for me. I'm sure they felt very,
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, totally. But you have route
guy.
density. You have route density, and you have, you don't have to trail it as far as and stuff. You can just like hit them all up at the same bracket. I mean, you're literally talking about my pool cleaning company. This is like our first year's lessons, our second year's lessons, and that's what we're doing our third year's.
And I would hit up all the yards first and foremost that had high, tall grass.
Yeah. Of
course, I knew the history because I'd been servicing these companies.
And there's not that many people. Yeah, you walk by these yards every day. Yeah.
And also, I know the responses typically as well, right? So I hit them up. They were kind of my low-hanging fruit, and I would just hit them up. And man, I was making 3 times more money than everyone else by then.
Yeah. Was that satisfactory for you?
Oh, I love it.
And is that what sparked your journey?
Well, I mean, I didn't end up becoming an entrepreneur until later in life, but
okay.
I hate what I realized young is I hated losing. I just felt that I was losing by, again, I can only compare it to my brother and my friends, but I just saw that I knew I was outworking all that. And there is a correlation on how I transferred from, as I told you before, I was a professional mascot. I started off as a mascot in sports. Did I tell you that?
I didn't know that. No,
okay.
You never told me that. That's amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I didn't go into technology until
You've
later.
You've done so many random things. I love it.
I know.
Well, that's why I'm like, oh, he's a tech founder. You exited a tech company and now you're an angel investor.
I left.
And then I'm like, you own a stretch bar? Like, that seems so weird, but now everything's starting to make sense.
Yeah. So anyway, so my sales skyrocketed, but yeah, I worked in the professional sports scene for a long time, and out of college, I became a mascot. I was a backup mascot actually for the regular mascot initially, but I also did sponsorship sales for like Kellogg's, and I was Tony the Tiger, and I was Frosted Flakes, and we gave out a box of Frosted Flakes every game at the hockey game, and I was the Domino's guy running around delivering pizza, and I created these promotions, and then I told the sponsor, my contact at the companies, I said, look, I will even be the mascot. I'm a backup mascot for our team, but I will be the mascot for these events. If you give me the outfit for Tony Tiger and the Domino's and the blue M&M Mars, I will run around like a crazy kid delivering all this stuff. And they bought into it. And that was kind of, got me into the sports scene. And then I moved to California to work for a minor league hockey team there. Worked for the San Francisco Giants, the Oakland A's, the Golden State Warriors, and the 49ers.
Doing what?
Sales, marketing, operations.
Oh, wow. That's
I had
awesome.
a whole career, because I ended up being a business major and a sport management major in college young after becoming a statistics major, criminal justice major, chemistry major. I had like 5 majors in college.
Are you serious?
I didn't graduate with 5.
Okay.
I had 5. Remember I told you I was undecisive because I had so many different interests.
Yeah.
But I realized that business and interacting with people was what I was good at and what I loved.
Yeah.
And so I focused on, and I love sports because I ended up playing a bunch of different sports, and I wanted to go play baseball, but that obviously didn't pan out.
Yeah.
So I hit the books and did an internship with the Orlando Magic, the PGA, and then finally a team in Atlanta, a minor league hockey team, where I became that mascot I told you about. And then I went to California and San Francisco and worked for a bunch of these sports teams. And then while at the 49ers, San Francisco 49ers in Santa Clara, where their headquarters was at, I was literally like across the street from a company called Brio, which was an analytics company.
Yeah.
And if you know, living in the Bay Area, as you know, you and I are both from the Bay Area, it's really expensive.
Very expensive, yeah.
And I was working my tail off, and I see my buddies, you hear the correlation again, I see my buddies making good money in tech. And this is in the late 90s, early 2000s, so I'm dating myself a little bit, but that's when I realized I'm working harder than them again, and I'm not making the money that I should be making.
Yep.
I left the 49ers and joined this company that was in analytics. I said, look, I don't know anything about what you do, but I know sales, I know people, I know marketing and operations. So you find me a job, I'm open to it. And they said, look, we got a job opening, 2 weeks, come on board. We'll do the onboarding process. We'll start you at the bottom of the ladder in sales and work your way up. And that was the end. And I was just into tech. And by year 2.5 or year 3, maybe, I'd already made more money in my 1 year there than I did almost combined, in my like 6-7 years in sports.
Yeah. Yeah. It's unbelievable. It's a really amazing story, but it's an unbelievable delta. And people don't realize the delta, especially in tech sales. Oh my gosh. It's like unbelievable. Yeah. And it's hard for people to fathom if you're not from the Bay Area, like just the disparity of pay. It's just so astronomical.
Or if you're making $100,000.
Oh, I know. I people freak out in Texas when I tell them that. I'm like, you can apply for food stamps. Like, you literally qualify for like welfare at $120,000 a year.
Yeah,
and they're like, they can't wrap their brain around the fact that you literally can get government subsidies at $120,000. I'm like trying to explain to you how much these people make.
Yeah,
it's a lot. Yeah,
but it goes back to not wanting to lose to young. I was a big, fierce competitor all throughout. I played high school basketball, baseball, soccer, wrestled. I did some of these on the club side, and I just did not like losing personally. I just, I worked so hard on trying at my skill, honing in, at my skill and my craft, and I just hated absolutely. And that was just burning like inside me all the time. I just wanted to win so badly.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's also explains a lot more about why you're doing so many things. But I'm also curious as to, like, if I may ask, like, were you just having like, so you wanted kids earlier and you're just having some issues getting that done, or were you intentionally trying to do it later because you wanted to get some more business stuff done? Or is it a combination of both?
It's a combination of both, but I always loved kids. I was always great with kids. I always felt like I was a kid.
Yeah.
Kind of, one of the things that I kind of just lived with was, don't take things too seriously. Yeah. Especially don't worry about the things you can't control. And I learned that really early on. Again, a lot of that comes back, stems from my dad. And obviously the things I can't control, I shouldn't really try and worry about. And and again, I was blessed to have a great life growing up as a child. I wouldn't take anything away from that. No regrets. I enjoyed it. I got to live overseas and travel the world and see things, and have probably my closest friends today are all from growing up in the military base.
Oh, wow. That's great. Yeah.
And not everyone can say that.
Absolutely not.
I got friends from 2nd and 3rd grade that are still good, close friends.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I think that I'm still friends with a lot of my childhood friends, but I mean, the vast majority of the ones that I socialize with now are like in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Just because like the chapters of your life change, and so those things aren't as seared and bonding enough for it to continue. So that's really incredible. Yeah. It's amazing.
So I've always acted like a kid. So I felt like I always got along with kids, and I learned very early on, and I told you I was a mascot. I used to visit hospitals for terminally ill kids.
Oh, wow.
And a mascot, you're wearing this uniform and you're kind of hiding underneath.
Yeah.
Kids, that's what they want. They want the favorite baseball player,
Tony the Tiger. Yeah.
Right. And I was the mascot for the team as well, right? So I
got it. Yeah.
And you're visiting these kids who are literally don't have much, and it makes you realize how fortunate you are, right?
Perspective, yeah.
And also it kind of forced me to be able to understand, I won't say understand, but to act with kids and be able to kind of integrate with them in a way, right? Even without the mascot uniform, I'd see kids, and because of that natural, learned lesson of working with kids. And, when you're working with terminally ill kids, the compassion is through the roof, right? I mean, you just feel for the kid and for the parents, knowing that many of them are not going to see beyond even the age of 7 or 8 years old, maybe 10 if they're lucky, at least in the hospitals, the children's hospitals that I was visiting. So sad. You learn to play with the kids. You learn what kind of things are, interest them, and you just kind of learn to adapt. And so when I took the uniform off, just in everyday life, it was no problem for me to walk up to a kid and all of a sudden start, even if I didn't know the kid, I just saw him in the grocery store and I was, whatever. It was really easy for me. So when my friends had kids earlier on, no brainer for me to pick up right where I had learned from before. So I knew I always wanted kids. What was instilled in me was grow the business, make a life of a successful career, find your niche and find what you're good at and do it And my dad said, look, son, have kids when you're later.
Yeah.
You know, so that was kind of what I didn't, you know, I mean, I dated here and there, and until I met Sandy, I, you know, never really gave it serious thought about having kids right then. So it wasn't until my 30s, that mid to late 30s, before I really considered about having kids.
Yeah. I had my kids late too. I mean, I'm in my mid 40s, and I'm I have same age kids as you, and so I definitely look at all the other dads, and when we go to these soccer games, and I'm definitely 10 years older than everybody else. But I think it's fine. Like, I mean, I obviously, if I can go back, I think I would. I think on like 51% I'd go sooner, but 49%, it's like pretty 50-50. Like, I'm pretty happy with the fact that I established myself more, because I don't think I would have been able to hone my hard skills. Like, there's a lot of like, people ask like, oh, how are you able to do so much now, like in your 40s? And it's kind of like, well, I just focused on learning really valuable skills in my 30s. Like, I just literally took the time to like actually get really great at a couple of things. Whereas like, if I had kids, you know what it's like. There's like no time for anything. Like, everything is just so busy now, and you're physically exhausted and mentally and emotionally beat up, and everything is just so much more complicated. And if I hadn't taken the decade before to like actually hone and craft those hard skills, I wouldn't be able to employ them at the density of life that's hitting me right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's so second nature, like riding a bike, these hard skills that I've honed, I could just do it flippantly. Whereas like, I think if I didn't earn those hard skills and I was trying to learn it now, I would be in a lot of hardships. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a good point, Young. There's, and I think you even talked about this in one of your podcasts that you did just for yourself, on the parallels of, of business and parenting, right?
Yeah.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. There are some hard skills that I learned just by running businesses or working in the corporate, environment for a long time.
Yeah.
I worked at Oracle, I worked at Hyperion, I worked at Brio, pre-IPO, IPO. There's a lot of things that you learn and you get stress tested on,
right.
Really pulled in a lot of different gajillion ways. And I primarily had a sales career. So, unlike being in, nothing against operations or finance or HR or marketing, it's really easy to define success in sales. Either you hit your number or you don't. And if you don't, you're gone, right? It's very black and white in a lot of ways, right? And so, again,
I take no offense to that at all. That's amazing. Yeah, as an operations finance person, you're absolutely accurate. Like, if I'm watching some P&L and then like the sales guy's not performing, it's very easy to make that decision. You're like, yep, you are or you aren't. It's very clean. It's very nice.
Right. And, and there are some gray here and there, but in the end, when the VP or, the chief revenue officer looks at things and if cuts need to be made and you're not performing, right, it makes it really easier for them.
Yeah. It's very straightforward.
And it's really just a numbers game for the most part. Hopefully you have a good product that, with good customer service, but in the end, it's a numbers game. And of course, there is sales skills that you get trained on and you can learn from and things like that. But it's really, for the most part, black and white, and it's either you hit your numbers or you're not. And so the parallels are that you learn a lot of things in the business world that I think do translate over and later in life. For me as a parent, that you talk about those hard skills that you learn that you might have not otherwise learned, or may have learned and taken a longer time to do so if you had kids. Because, like you said, kids can be exhausting. And I didn't have to worry about that because in my 30s, I didn't have kids. And so I was building up my career and building up my skill sets and gaining a lot of life lessons learned.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I'm not saying it's better or worse. I just think that there's a lot of advantages and there's obviously cons to it. But one of the advantages is that, right? This episode of the Girl Dad Show is brought to you by Owners Club. As a business owner myself, I know firsthand how challenging the journey can be. Whether it's having someone that I can ask a very tactical question to, or just being able to share my big successes without guilt. Building a business is a lonely journey, and it does not have to be. After building and coaching dozens of businesses to success, there is one insight that is so obvious and simple, yet hard to execute. And that is network equals net worth. And so if you're a growth-minded, supportive, smart, and hardworking business owner looking for a community of like-minded entrepreneurs to build with, look no further than the Owners Club. You will make lifelong friends and build your business that works for you. You can learn more online at owners.club. So talk to me about your kids though. So do you want them to get married later too? Or do you care when they get married? Or
I don't care. I just want them happy.
That's it.
Yeah.
Do you care if they start a business? Do you care if they become
I'm going to teach them about business.
Yeah.
But, my dad kind of just said, son, I don't care what you do. I just want you to be happy about it. And he also kind of said this to me also about relationship. He goes, I don't care if you want to marry a tree. He goes, I don't really care. As long as you're happy, if an alien comes down from outer space and is mixed with green, purple, blue, red, yellow, and orange and looks crazy and you fall in love and you're happy, I don't really care. And that really says a lot from my dad who grew up in Georgia, right? And in Savannah, Georgia, think about conservative and things like that.
Yeah.
But he, I forgot the name of the movie now, South Pacific or something like that, where back then, and I shouldn't say this, but he used to call the Asian women Orientals.
Yeah. That was the term for many decades. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And
America,
he saw this movie, and I forgot the name of it, where, it featured a lot of women, Asian women overseas, and he joined the military and he was educated. So he went through ROTC and became an officer, but he went overseas and never returned back to Georgia. And, he just had this kind of insight that said, hey, son, I don't care. As long as you're happy, do what makes you happy. Right. You don't have to follow my footsteps. But when I was younger, I was good in chemistry because I saw my dad do chemistry and he was a chemist. And so I excelled at that. I became a tutor in chemistry. But in the end, I found out while in college, it was not what I wanted to do.
Yeah, there's something about proximity, right? Like if you raise your kids in music, they're going to have music in their lives. It's the same thing as entrepreneurs. Like you hang out with enough, people that do robots, you're going to be a roboticist. You hang out with enough business people, you become a business. It's just kind of by association. But I do think that there's something to be said about like him traveling and being, in the military, because I think that the fact that you travel and you experience so many more things opens up your mindset. It turns into you have I feel a higher sense of understanding of the world, right? And human
it's
evolution.
about being cultured.
Yeah.
Right? And so that is a goal to share with my kids. My wife is fully supportive of it. Matter of fact, my wife and I, prior to having kids, and we've been together since 2010, prior to having kids, and we had kids, our daughter Zoe, who was 5, we had her in 2018. But prior to that, every year we would travel basically to 2 or 3 new countries.
Every year?
Every year.
Wow. That's aggressive. Yeah.
So
it's so funny. We were like, we're doing parallel things. Like when we had our kids, we looked at the crossroads, right? Because like so many people, 90% of parents just start hunkering down for the next 10 years. They're like, oh, let's just stay in the house and like hunker down. And we're like, we're going to follow the 10% of people that just literally are traveling. They just bring the kid along. And so we're going to be part of that group. And so we weren't as aggressive as you. We did 1 international trip and 1 domestic trip minimum a year. And then anything else obviously would be great, but that was the minimum.
Well, we would knock out like 3 countries on 1 trip.
Oh, got it. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, we would go to, let's say, Europe, and we'd hit like the, Czech Republic, and then we'd hit, I think we hit Germany, Czech Republic.
Are you back on the track of doing that? Are you now traveling with the kids again?
Not yet. Because our son he's not quite ready for that long trip yet. Yeah. I think the longest we've done with our son is to California for Disneyland.
How do you do?
Great.
Good. Yeah.
Put an iPad in front of him.
Yeah. You could do Mexico or Canada then. Start there.
We can do that now. We're thinking about doing Europe next year, possibly. And we just love Europe so much. And both Sandy and I have been over in Asia a lot. But I have a brother in Japan, in Okinawa. He's there now working for the military, kind of following my dad's footsteps. And so we'd like to go over there as well.
Is that Bill or is there another brother?
Yeah, that's
Bill.
Bill.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
I have
that's
a
great.
half-sister up in Michigan. She's a doctor.
So some of your goals for your kids are to get them cultured, to travel with them. And then and then just to paraphrase, you're not really looking for them to do one profession or the other, or getting married earlier or later, that kind of stuff is negligible to you, or do you have a preference?
Well, I guess if I'm being selfish, I'd like to see them get married earlier so that I can witness it, not be a wheelchair crippled or something like that, but
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
in the end, I just one thing that I've learned from other friends, right, who have kids or older, is that no matter how much you kind of preach to them about certain things, in the end, like, come on, think about, you're Asian, I'm half Asian. The Asian parents typically want you to be a doctor, a lawyer, engineer, and you're going to play the piano or the violin, one of those two instruments.
Maybe do a martial arts.
And maybe do martial arts. Hate to be kind of there.
That's the optional thing. Yeah, but you're definitely playing piano or violin.
Right.
You're definitely a lawyer or a doctor, and then now engineer is kind of part of that too. Yeah.
Right. So
totally.
I think in the end it goes back to, I'm gonna expose them to my wife and I want to expose them to as many cultures as possible, as languages and different ethnicities, and because that's how I grew up, and that's how and my wife did as well, and and we can interact and meet all different types of people from all different parts of the world and have some type of connection with them, I believe. I know I do, and it's helped me in my career now, especially in the mentorship and working with entrepreneurs and understanding their backgrounds and being able to connect with them. But I think it's really, being a parent for me is to try and give them those life experiences and expose them. Ultimately, they can find things that are of interest to them now, whether it carries over later on when they're older. I don't know. I know that from a lot of parents, I'll give you an example. I have a parent whose kids were models and they don't want to model anymore after they got older. They were child models, and when they got to become a little bit in teenagers, and they were beautiful kids, they kind of stopped modeling and didn't want to do it as a career, even though the mom was like, this could be, really great for them.
Thing, yeah.
So yeah, I think it's negligible. I just want them to be happy. I do want to try and expose them to as many things as possible so that they have an opportunity to see what's out there, and again, like me, be exposed to a lot, and then have them pick their interests or gravitate toward an interest. Early on, I know that my son loves music and loves dancing and loves all things related to that.
Art and creation. Yeah. That's great.
And my daughter too. My son's only 3, so he's not really like drawing so much, but daughter definitely drawing and.
Yeah. And then are you now thinking about like what that looks like if you travel more? So are you going to be doing less business building? Because I know you've built quite a ecosystem for yourself.
Yeah, I'm, there's something about having a legacy to pass on to the kids, at some point. We moved here because we had help, basically. Didn't have any help there in California. And I'm not originally from California, but I spent, a good bit of time there being in the technology and also working in those,
sports teams. Yeah.
Sports teams that I mentioned earlier. So, when we first moved here to Texas, I told my wife in 5 to 7 years, I'd like to move to Japan for about
with the kids?
With the kids, 2 or 3 years, and just get them exposed.
Do you just send them to international school, or do you homeschool them?
Yeah, you send them to international school, and then we travel all over Asia, Go to Korea, go to Guam, Philippines, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam.
I would love to do that.
Thailand.
I would love to do that, but in order to do that,
come along.
Let's do it. I need another year or two. I'm a little bit behind you on my business building.
I'm still 5 years away from this, so.
Okay, cool. Okay, good. So I have some time to get my businesses up. Okay, cool. Talk to me about Sandy.
Yeah. So I said this earlier, right? That because I'm in business, oftentimes I'm taken away from being able to help out, right? And one of the things is that you just realize, and I'm sure it goes without saying, but the moms are really the superheroes here. I mean, they truly are. The kids, when they're crying, oftentimes they go crying to mommy first and foremost, and then, well, maybe daddy, or they'll even say, "Go away, daddy, go away. I want mommy." So that's something that, I cannot even stress enough how important, how big of a role mom plays. And she really
sounds like you have a really great partnership with her as it relates to the parenting and working relation. You guys are aligned in your strategic goals.
Yeah, I mean, she still is doing a lot more of the heavy lifting than I do, I think, overall, from that perspective. And that's, again, I think because of the business aspects and things like that, she's not running, and she's an employee with a hospital, but she works remotely and she does have a lot of work, but she's not running a lot of different things I think that I'm running. And, and I'm gone for events and happy hours and networking events. And then this is one reason why we moved here is because we do have mother-in-law here to help us out with the, taking care of what I'm gone.
But it takes that combined effort to understand that kind of give and pull, right?
Sure.
So that's really fantastic.
Yeah.
It's really fantastic.
And you've got to be communicating, and we still work on that, always, because sometimes I'll approach her and say, oh, I forgot to tell you that I have this event tomorrow,
Yeah.
So we try and get better at that. And we have a little calendar that we share too, but
our calendar system sucks. We're still working on that. We've been doing this for 6 years, and my wife and I still get into arguments about, I didn't tell you that to be gone tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's the
I'm
worst.
gone for a few days back to California. I didn't tell you. Oh, I'm sure I did.
I'm sure I did. Yeah.
But
man.
just, the moms out there, they usually are the big superheroes, I think, in all this. And
I completely agree. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Ichan. And very good. Hey, Ichan, let me switch gears here and ask you some rapid fire questions. I know time flies when we get into these things, but I do want to be cognizant of your time. So, all right, these are the questions I like to ask every guest. So no matter where the conversation goes, there's some symmetry to them. What advice do you have for soon-to-be parents or current parents that you can give them?
Oh, man. Be patient. And try to focus on the positive behavior that they display and not criticize the negative. It's so easy. And, and I'm guilty of it myself. But I've seen where you enforce the good behavior early on, it really makes a big impact. And it's still very much a work in progress, because our son and daughter can erupt at any time, as, a 5 and 3-year-old would. And you have meltdowns, and we've all experienced them. And no matter what, the meltdown can ruin your entire day sometimes. I know you just discussed that in one of your podcasts. I think.
Oh, yeah. I totally did.
Yeah, I would say just being patient and try and also, I would say I've learned that crying is healthy. Interestingly enough.
You mean as an adult, as a parent?
Not for the kids.
Okay, yeah. I just wanted to clarify.
I guess even so for the parents, although I haven't cried a lot, but but just, I was just told as a kid, don't cry, you shouldn't cry. And
well, I was told a little bit of that too, especially as a male, you know what I mean? Like I was told that by my mom.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So
it's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. My Amy says this to me a lot. She's like, stopping them from having emotions. Let them like feel it out. And I'm like, it's just hard for me to like respond to that. But she says that a lot.
Hard.
Yeah.
Very hard. Yeah.
Yeah, she's a much more advanced human being than I am. She's way more sophisticated and patient when it comes to raising children.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Absolutely. My wife is a superhero.
Nice. That's good. So if you can go back and tell yourself one thing before having kids, what would you tell yourself?
Oh, man. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I feel like you're so good at that.
Not when I was younger. So I told you also, young, I kind of described a little story. I would say I was always very positive in nature.
Mm-hmm.
But I always wanted to do everything by myself.
Interesting.
I always felt like the success was me doing it by myself and accomplishing it all by myself. I learned, for the most part, I learned early on that I can't do it all by myself. But I didn't learn that until after I was in college, or like midway through or latter half of college, and then into my career. When I learned, oh my gosh, I can't do this all by myself. I need a team. And I need a team that's willing to march behind me and help me as a leader. At the time I first graduated college, I wasn't a leader. I was, just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. But I try to find positivity in every day. I'm always very positive in that regard. I always want, again, having parents kind of tell you should do this or do that sometimes, right? I always kind of tended like, well, I should stop trying to be someone I'm not and do something that I really love and not let others try and bestow upon me. But I learned that when I was working at Brio, after I did all the sports stuff, that in the technology world, I really had to rely upon my solution architect. I had to rely upon people that were really extremely technical, more technical than me, to digest that, because you started having these technical conversations. I didn't have that in the sports world. Everything I could do on my own, and I was doing it, very successfully. But I learned I needed to ask for help. And when I asked for help, and I thanked them for it and rewarded them for it and acknowledged their success, just recognizing them and saying, look, Young, thank you. And I broadcast it out to everyone else on the team saying, hey, Young, I just want to acknowledge that Young was really helpful. And the amount of synergy and the level of continued success, and it just blossomed every time I started building up that with someone, right? Because now I've got you and I got someone else that's working to help support our goal. And I ended up having a tremendous successful career as a salesperson in the technology world, working at the large companies, and a great deal of that is thanks to others helping me, because I just never would have been able to accomplish all this, including my last company that I sold. Right, part of that was having a team and having the employees, and some of these employees today said, "Look, Ichan, if you start another company that you can employ me, I'll gladly join you and I'll work for you any day of the week." And that's really, kind of gratifying and just
hugely gratifying.
Right.
That's a testament of like a great leader and a great friend and a great mentor. Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah. And it just, it's nice to hear that, that they valued, that, but I go back to saying, look, I could have done it.
It's just funny for me to hear. The only reason why I question it, Ichan, is because I've known you for now like a little over a year, and our relationship has gotten very dense very quickly. And it's been mostly predicated on me asking you for help. Like, Ichan, tell me what you think about this. Ichan, tell me what I should do here. What do you give me some advice? Like, help me here. What should I do?
Yeah, but
it's like funny for me to like my entire relationship has been predicated on me asking you for advice and help.
Yeah, but it's funny though, Young, I don't think you've picked up on it, but I've asked you for some things about like your pool business, and I've asked very, I don't know,
gently. Yeah, very gently.
In a hidden way, because I've asked you about because remember you told me about your pool business and about the maintenance of your vehicles and how almost you almost need to start an auto mechanic or auto shop.
That's right. Because the fleet's getting too big and the costs are getting too high. Yeah.
Although I didn't really come out and ask a question, it helps me to understand about, wow, if I start a business that requires a fleet of vehicles, I know that I can ask you questions. I asked you about what the cost was. And so it's very subtle.
That's interesting.
In nature.
Yeah. That is good. Yeah. That's very good. Yeah. I love it.
But trust me, I ask for help all the time.
Awesome. Very good. Very good. Let me switch gears here a little bit. Your favorite business book? Do you have one?
I've got one from the old time, and I have a new one, kind of.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
What's the new one? Tell me both.
Yeah. So you probably heard from Jeffrey Moore, Crossing the Chasm.
Oh yeah. Wow, that's a good one. That's old school.
It was a good book for me because it was teaching about innovation and really, kind of that gap between early adopters and having, customers and trying to find that. So that was a really good book that I liked. And it was given to me when I first started in technical sales at Brio. So I said, hey, read this book. And then recently, I don't know if you know who Patrick King is, an author. Mm-hmm. He does a lot of book on social kind of stuff. It's more like so the book that I read was how to talk to anybody, how to read a person, basically.
Oh, wow.
And so he's out of San Francisco, actually. So the book is titled How to Talk to Anyone.
Wow.
And
that's cool.
And it's
a great title.
Right. And I was already doing this, but it just reinforced a lot what I was doing.
It also puts like a system into it, right?
Right.
Because you do it innately versus intentionally.
It's for me, Young, as a mentor and an advisor, and also as a consultant, I've got to be able to connect with people.
Oh yeah.
And my dad there's a lot of similarities with me and my dad. My dad would, although he was a chemist, my dad loved telling jokes. He loved to be the center of a party, and he would sip and say, "Everyone gather around. I got some jokes to tell you," and everyone would be captivated, right?
Yeah.
It's really being able to captivate someone's attention, really be able to grab their attention. And remember, I grew up overseas. I lived in a lot of different places or visited a lot of different places. And having that...
Sorry, my kids just joined.
No, don't worry. This is the Girl Dad Show.
I know. Do you guys want to say hi? Come here, say hi. You guys can say hi.
Hi. How are you guys doing?
Okay. Sorry, I can't hear you. I have you on my headphones.
Yeah.
But
So,
yeah, sorry, it's unavoidable.
I that book just kind of reinforced a lot of things that I do. And when you gather pieces of things like that, but he's got a lot of different books. Better Small Talk. There's a number of books that he has.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out. That's amazing. I love books like that.
Yeah.
It's like akin to like How to Make Friends and Influence, right?
Right.
Like, that's
it was just reinforcing me on how I approach people, how I talk to people. And because I lived overseas and because I spent a lot of time in a lot of different places, like I told you, if you're from Morocco or you're from South Africa or you're from Switzerland or from Cambodia, there's a good chance that I have something that I can share with you that immediately grabs your attention. I was talking to a woman yesterday at the hospital, and she was from Cambodia, and I was talking to her, or from Thailand. I was talking to her, and she had visited Cambodia, and I told her about this and that, and all of a sudden you see kind of these walls come down a little bit, and
totally creating those emotional connections and relatability is huge.
Right?
Yeah,
it's huge.
Yeah.
So I feel like my dad used to say, "I can talk to a tree, and I swear the tree will talk back."
That's awesome. Your dad really likes analogies with trees. I love it.
He does, yeah.
Hey, Ichan, one last question.
Sure.
And I know I'm over time here, and I know you're a busy man, but if you, when you're not building businesses and building your, hey, kiddos, one more minute, okay? If when you're not building your ecosystem and your all your like businesses and advising startups and investing and doing all this stuff, and then trying to travel more with your kids and being a super dad, what do you do for fun? What's your downtime activities?
Yeah. So obviously playing with the kids is one thing, right? But I'm big on sports. I love watching sports. I used to play a lot of fantasy football and fantasy sports too. I don't do that as much because of the kids now and just not as much time. So it's primarily revolving around sports. If you follow me or know me, I just went to the World Series, with Rangers won the World Series. So yeah,
awesome.
I'm just big
sports enthusiast. Yeah,
big sport enthusiast. So that's a big one part of me. And then I love to cook, love eating and love cooking. So I love although I don't cook it all the time, but I love learning about new recipes and experimenting. Nice. And I do a lot of the cooking for some of our major holidays. It's usually my mother-in-law and myself. We do most of the cooking.
That's fun.
And I'll fire up 2 turkeys for Thanksgiving, or my mother-in-law will do one and I'll do one sometimes. And I just love doing that. So cooking and trying, wines and stuff like that.
That's awesome.
And sport. Sure.
Great. I love it. Ichan, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show and share a little bit about yourself. Yeah, I had a ton of fun. Hope you did too. And I'm sure we'll talk soon. And now I'll watch for when you're asking for help from me, because now I'll be like listening for it.
That's subtle, very subtle, but yeah.
Ichan, thank you, sir. We'll talk soon. Okay.
All right. Sounds good, Young.
See ya. Bye.
Bye-bye.
This episode of The Girl Dad Show is brought to you by you. We have been working very hard to bring you the best guests and content to the show and have been steadily growing month over month. And we're finally ready to start talking to businesses that want to partner with us to promote on our show. So if you know anyone that would be interested in having me promote their business on The Girl Dad Show, please email us at young@thegirldadshow.com. Thank you for your support and look forward to learning how to be a great parent together.